excited about getting back to this, excited about talking, and wouldn't you know, this week I ran across something and I was like, well, this is probably my favorite subject to speak on. And so was listening to a podcast one morning as I was making breakfast. John Maxwell had a series on there, a two-parter. This is really just covering kind of the first of the podcast series. As I mentioned before, a very good one when it comes to leadership in the format of that. His podcast was called Maximizing the Moment. What I took out of it was it is a lot about leading ourselves before we lead others. So I've talked about this a couple of times. However, I don't feel like the message should ever get stale because the premise of leading ourselves is always getting better, seeking change, finding growth. Thus, we're always doing it. It's a endless game and one that we're always chasing. He quotes John Wooden, who is one of his mentors, and as people who live in Indiana, and as Mary has her Purdue Cup there, Purdue alum John Wooden says, when opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare. Now, what does that mean? What does that relate to that we've talked about before? To me, when I hear that, it relates to the premise of what are we doing today to get better for tomorrow. Maxwell puts it in his podcast, how do I position myself today to be the person I need to be in the future? So when I look at that, there's two parts. So it's how do I position myself today? So what do my actions look like today? Often we find people, we do an annual review, or, you sit down with someone in a one-on-one and, where do you want to be? And oftentimes the answer we get back is, well, I don't know. Never thought about it, which is perfectly fine. But how much more power, or how much power would your actions have today if you knew where you were going? If you knew where you wanted to go? So the question that we all have to start with is, who is it that we want to be in the future? And that doesn't have to be necessarily all professional or, I want to achieve this or whatever that is. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of parent do you want to be? What kind of spouse do you want to be? What does that look like? And oftentimes we find ourselves waiting until we get there. Well, I'm not there yet, so I don't have to worry about that. Well, I don't really have anybody that reports to me, so, when I get that, I'll work on that stuff. Sounds great. Coming to this class. Well, I'll get there when I get to that position. I think that'll be good. We must first define where we want to go, and then work backwards to develop a plan of how in the heck we're going to get there. If we don't have a plan, you don't have much. If we're just sitting there waiting for things to happen to us, they very rarely do. Most people say, that guy's got really good luck. He just kind of falls into things. I'd bet that he has a plan, or she has a plan to get there. I've very rarely seen it work not that way. So 2 tools that I will give you today that I've shared in the past that I've really, here recently it seems, I think getting back to kind of a normal schedule has allowed me to kind of reconnect with these things. I'll admit this virus, as we were working through it and watching kids and trying to work and all of that stuff, as you can imagine, if many of you know me well and my infinite C personality, that was like an earthquake to my world. However, getting back into a normal routine and swing of things, the 2 tools that I've really connected with and really reflected on are my own personal vision or life plan, and also a time management tool that I've shared in the past before. My vision, as many of you know that have been with us for a little while, each year, myself and my brother, we write kind of what we call our vivid vision. So what the company is going to look like in 3 years. We started this exercise back in 2016, and we have had great success with it as far as writing this document to really depict what we want it to look like. So reflecting back on what we just talked about personally, this is just for a company. So you can do this personally too. What is your life going to look like in 3 years? Taking some time, reflecting on that. What do you want it to look like? The best part about this is as you write it down, it can be anything you want. And so I do this exercise for myself. It's a modified version. It's an exercise I stole from a buddy of mine, Adam Whitty, who gave me this tool that I've since grasped onto. It's I've kind of put my own spin on it, but it's kind of my own personal vivid vision, and then his tool, which is called a life plan. So the life plan essentially is a depiction of all the steps that I need to take in order to get where I want. It's a 20-page document that basically depicts everything I need to do, every goal I have, my values, what I stand for, what I want to do. All of those things are all written down. And I've used it for about the past year and a half to really get crystal clear on what I want to do. I think sometimes the biggest impact I've seen is adding balance to my life. Working in this business and growing it and all the things we have going on, it's very easy to get out of kilter with what it is that you want to do. So I would say one of the biggest impacts it's had is on my personal life and really writing down kind of those things, what kind of spouse do I want to be? What kind of father do I want to be? And not waiting for that to happen. Like, what do I need to do today to be the spouse that I want to be? Well, that was after a tumultuous morning where I turned on coffee maker, forgot to put the cup under the maker, walked to the bedroom as my normal routine goes, and walked back into the kitchen and was like, there's no one up. What is that? Is there running water? To turn around the corner and see that it had poured a cup of coffee, not into cup, but on floor. So after I cleaned that up, the one thing that was in my mind is, and is every morning, is I have to make my wife's coffee drink. I've got to get her drink ready, put it in the fridge, get it ready for her to go. That's just something that is kind of, as I'll get into here, kind of that act of service. How do we serve others? It's very small. Could she make her own coffee? Absolutely. It's literally pushing a button. However, I proved that to be more difficult this morning. You do have to put the cup under there. That could have thrown my morning out of kilter, but my plan for life and the person that I want to try to be, I don't always do it. There's times I fail, miserably, in fact. But I knew that I had to do that. And I feel like having that plan, having that course of action of who I wanted to be really guided me through that situation. And there again, minor, but I mean, think about that. Think about the last time, you drove to work and someone cut you off, or, things aren't going right, or whatever the case may be. And then what kind of day do you usually have? Well, everything's going wrong. I can't get anything to go right. Well, what does that go back to? It goes back to not really having a plan, letting life happen to you rather than you happening to life. And so that tool has really, really impacted my life. It does take time. When I first did it, I was like, this is overwhelming. But I just kind of took it a section at a time. And it's really fun to kind of reflect on, who you want to be, what your values are, and different things like that. The other piece is, obviously, once you get a plan, how am I going to do that? How am I going to get there? And so one of these tools that for the life of me, I cannot figure out where I have zero good ideas, but I read a lot and find all these great ideas that I then just try to use. So I got this idea from somewhere. I just have no idea where I got it from. But it's a time management tool where you basically take all the hours that you have in a day or a week and start with the most important things. There again, your life plan would guide what's most important. We all have responsibilities like, taking the kids to school or, doing whatever. All of these things come into our life, but if we have scheduled time out for those, there's a greater likelihood they're going to happen, or there's a greater likelihood you're going to make time for them. The one thing I always say around the office is that the meeting that I'm always apt to cancel is the one that I have with myself. That meeting where I'm supposed to work on what the most important things. And oftentimes the more trivial things take our time. And that happens to all of us because all of a sudden that's pressing, or I've got to jump to this, I've got to do this. And the bigger things get pushed aside. Because why do they get pushed aside? They're more difficult. They're the bigger things. They're the things that you're not going to see a result after today. It's going to be work that you put in today that you're going to have to put in tomorrow and the next day and the next day and so on and so forth. So it's very easy to push off, to procrastinate. I guess that, thinking about those two tools that I wanted to share today, the name of this with this nice screen we got is all about leadership. So how does that relate to leadership? Sounds very selfish, the tools that I talked about. It's your own personal life, how you're going to spend your time. So what does that have to do with leadership? I mean, that's why you guys all came. That's why you guys are sitting here. How does that relate? How does my personal life plan relate to leadership? How does me managing my time and setting aside time blocks, how does that relate to leadership? Maxwell talks about in this podcast, he talks about asking himself that question that I alluded to at the beginning. Who do I need to be today to be the person I want to be in the future? He comes up with some thoughts and breaks these down, and I'm going to cover 3 of them today. I'm going to cover 3 of these thoughts that he has that relate to you personally, but also very closely relate to leadership. Because, as we all know, leading ourselves first is the key to being a good leader. So the first thought that he talks about is humility. I don't know about you, but I've always found the word humility very weird. Like, I always think humiliated. Like, well, that seems weird. Why would anyone want to do that? And so for me, Maxwell really cleared this up in this podcast, and I feel like I have the best grasp I have on the word humility after listening. And so he says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but rather yourself less. Let me repeat that, because as you'll see from my notes, I wrote it wrong and had to cross it out to rewrite it, so I was really hesitant that I was going to get that right. But he says, not thinking less of yourself, but rather yourself less. But just as we talked about, isn't it about us? Isn't it about our life plan? Isn't it about our time management? The one thing that I have learned, and I have learned through experience, I did not know this, no one told me this, it just took time to develop. I was coming up on, I guess August will be 9 official years here, which is kind of crazy to think about. Christy still calls me by the wrong name. She did this morning. So, I thought we've shared some time together. However, the last 3 mornings, I think, in a row, she's called me my brother's name. So, I was checking the clock to make sure it was actually 9 years and not 9 days. But yeah, I know. Well, I thought I'd throw that in there. But the one thing that I have learned is you'll get where you want by sharing your gifts. And so I think the one thing that, as it relates to the life plan, as it relates to the time management, is what are your gifts? What are you good at? What were you blessed with? And then having the humility to say, I was actually blessed with this. Now, have I worked really hard to develop it? Have I worked really hard to get good at it? Yeah, absolutely. Don't take that away from yourself. But how do we share those gifts? How do we find opportunities to share them with others? The mindset of service to others builds them. So me serving someone else is ultimately going to build them up. What does that do? Inevitably, it causes you to grow as well. But so many people have trouble with that. So many leaders have trouble with that. What's in it for me? How do I be right in this situation? I don't want to be wrong. I'm right. I got all the answers. That's why I'm in this position. This guy, he just doesn't understand. I don't get why he just doesn't get it. That's a lack of humility. There is no service to others when all you're out to do is be right. Seek to understand, not to be right. That's where great questions come in. If we seek to understand as a leader, what also does that do? That person's probably going to want to do a great job for you. Not finger pointing, not putting your finger down on somebody. Stop doing that. Stop it. There's no need to. There's no need to be right in this whole thing. You're right when you're serving others. You're right when you're reaching out to help them. That's the right thing to do. And when you do that, you will accomplish what you want to accomplish. You know, when we want to be right all the time, when we lack humility in a situation, what is that? It's ego. Our ego's coming in. Well, I was put in this position because I know all this stuff. Well, I got all this knowledge. They put me in charge here to teach all these young whippersnappers what to do. By God. Yep, he did it again. Knucklehead. Did he? Or did you not ask the right question? Because you were too worried about being right. Probably the latter. Rather than asking the right questions to understand, why are you having trouble with that? What seems to be the issue? How can I help? Where can I help? I want you to do this right, however you seem to be struggling. Let's get together and figure this out. Because I want you to do good. I don't want to be right. I want to be right because I'm helping you. When we give others credit, when we show that we care because we know that they have it in them to be good, that's when we start serving them as a leader instead of a manager. We don't need any managers around here. We just need people to help each other. It's a really simple concept. We struggle with it because we all have an ego to some extent. Everyone wants to be right. Hell, I want to be right. You know. But what I've found is that being right never gets me to where I want to be. It may in that moment, you get that little burst of, confidence like, I told them. God, if he would have just listened to me, look where we would have been. This would have been awesome. Okay. Yeah, it would have been in that moment. But what's the likelihood that he's going to reach out to do his best for you in the future so that you can be right again? I certainly ain't doing it. So I'm going to do my best so that you can be right again. Seems to be conflicting. Humility. I hope that gives you a better understanding of humility as it did for me and how it really, really relates to leadership. Humility is essentially casting the ego to the side and looking to help somebody. The next thought that Maxwell talks about, that's one of my favorite and one of my favorite things about this place, is adaptability. I feel like and take great pride in the fact that we change things at an incredibly rapid pace, and it excites me. Do we always change to the right thing? No, absolutely not. I mean, we've had some stuff fall flat on its face. That didn't work. Oh boy. Absolutely. But the willingness to take the chance is what ultimately is going to allow us to grow. Maxwell says, take advantage of the detour tour. Now, what's he referring to? In my mind, or what I took from this, is there's a path of how we've always done it, or how someone says it should be done. That's the tour. What's the detour? Doing it in a different way. Trying something new. Trying a different path. We can all relate to seeing a detour sign when we're driving. Oh boy, here we go. Where are you taking me? This isn't going to be great. But it is through constant development we grow ourselves, and ultimately we hope to grow others. Now, do others always want change? Absolutely not. If we had everybody in the company in here, they may say, absolutely. You change one more thing, by God, sorry, it's going to happen. Welcome. All the time. We can't. You know, many people want to stay in that comfort zone. We've had many people come aboard here. Well, this is how we did it over here. That's how I've always been doing it. Okay. And you know what? That may be a fantastic way. Actually, that may be a better way than what we do. So I definitely want to hear that. But here's how we do it, and this is why we do it. So do we want to, maybe there's a mesh between the two of them that makes it even better. Possibly. I don't know. We're open to change. We're open to see, hey, maybe it'll work if we do it like this. Or if we start the conversation like that. One thing that hit me, I think it was last week or the week before. So as part of Nexstar, we have monthly coaching calls with our business coach. Our business coach, John Conway, love the man to death. He is a huge reason why we sit here in this wonderful building today, because of him always pushing us. And I told John, or I came to the realization 2 months ago, I go, John, we've been listening to you for 5 years, every month. No, I don't think we've ever missed a month. We've listened to you for 5 months. And this past month, I got more out of that call than literally, I think, any call that I've ever had. So 5 times 12 is 60 calls. 60 calls I've had with him. I learned probably 5 things and got so excited. But the only way that I learned those was because I was sitting in a room with people who are open to change. They're open to say, it's a hell of an idea. Why didn't we we should have thought of that. Sorry, John. I'm sure you've probably said it before. We should have listened. But it's that open mind. It's that willingness to be adaptable, willingness to get outside the box, willingness to think of new ideas, willingness to cast the ego to the side. That's what leads to growth. And while that's hard, there's got to be an understanding that if you change, it's not because you were doing it wrong. It's just that this way may produce a better result. There's a ton of ways to do things. We could go join some other organization, not Nexstar, and guess what? We'd probably learn a lot of great stuff from them too. It just so happens we choose their stuff and they change. The sales class at Nexstar over the course of 5 years has changed literally every year. Like, they teach you how to sell like a completely different way than what they taught like a year ago. They changed the entire class. They read a book and decided, oh, that's really powerful. I think we're going to change the content of the class and how we approach talking to a customer. That's a willingness to change. That's a willingness to be adaptable. That's really cool. As leaders, we probably run up against a lot of opposition to being adaptable. But it's our job to encourage adaptability by, again, first leading ourselves and being adaptable. If a technician or someone in your department's got a great idea, listen. Get feedback. We learned this month when the sales team's like, hey, can we be a part of these, ideas for promotions? Sure. I guess if you think about it, we've just always just kind of, Lauren and I would get together and come up with something. All right, sounds good. Let's throw it on out there, see if it works. Well, maybe we ought to ask the people that are actually pitching this stuff. Well, they had a lot of great ideas. In fact, one idea that we threw into the mix this week. Heck, let's try it. But there again, it's people willing to change. We already had a promotion for this month. We could have stood by that and said, hey, you know what? By God, we're running this. We already got it in print. We already got it on the radio. We stand behind this. I came up with it. It's my idea, and by God, it's a good one. Well, this was a better one. And we all thought that, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, we can pivot and do this. Let's see how it works. Well, it's worked a couple times already. We're not even promoting it. That's pretty cool. But there again, a willingness to do something outside the box. I've worked here for 9 years, as I said, or 9 days, depending on who you ask. And we have never had the sales team in on the only time we had the sales team in on the promotion was when I was the sales team. So it was just a one-way street there. I came up with it and implemented it, so which was not a great situation at all. Actually, I still remember my first crack at the sales gig was actually Memorial Day weekend 9 years ago, and it was not pretty. One person, and that was when we had paper. Those little service call slips were in like 8 rows on my desk. It wasn't pretty, and I'm not great in the home in front of the customer. That's the other thing that was a little bit difficult to overcome. Another example today, or not today, the other day we were sitting somewhere and we were talking about like how the call center verifies an address or something, and I think Lauren came up with the idea. She's like, she just said, I didn't realize she was doing that, or hey, that's a really cool idea. I did know she was doing that. I'm going to have her teach the rest of the call center how to do that. And it was just it was literally, I assume it's like a 2-click process to verify an address in Service Titan, but she's like, well, hell, that's a great idea. Let her teach it. Not, well, we do it this way, so back off. Shelby, terrible idea. Don't ever do anything like that again. You just Google crazy person. But again, goes back to a lot of what we talk about in the above the line, below the line. Above the line, we're curious. We're interested. Yeah, what are you guys doing over there? What's that look like? Why are we doing that? It's being adaptable. Being open to doing something different. Going in with the expectation that my idea may not be the best idea. So I'll just present it as that. Hey, got this idea. What do you guys think? It's terrible. Okay, a little bit harsh, but come at me a little bit softer. But let's talk about it. Okay, what do you think? How about your perspective? Seek to understand. Understand where those perspectives are. A lot of times things don't work because we got the wrong perspective, or we're only looking at it from our perspective. We're using our ego. Adaptability. Being curious leads to the last one of these thoughts that Maxwell had that I'm going to touch on. This one is what he calls open-handedness. And I will admit, I had like an epiphany on one of these things I'm excited to talk about as I was listening back through it again this morning and kind of preparing and kind of getting in the mood to stand up here and talk. But, when we talk about change, when we talk about being adaptable, the first thought is always, well, how's this going to affect me? Well, if I change, does that mean that my idea was wrong? Does that mean I was silly? Does that mean I was stupid? Does that mean I didn't know what I was doing? It's our ego rolling up in there. And so what he talks about is open-handedness. And the analogy, if you think about it, is when we're closed-handed, we cannot receive anything, nor can we give anything. We're closed-handed. However, when we are open-handed, we're open to receiving, whether that be new information, new ideas, feedback, whatever that looks like, open-handed. So that's the analogy that he uses, and he talks about what he calls the washing hands principle. This is where I had the epiphany. He says, if you think in the terms of the analogy of hands, and you are the right hand, you're the right hand. If you try to wash, or when you wash your hands, you use one hand to wash the other, right? So think about it as your one hand, someone else is the other hand. When you wash, you're serving that other hand. You're helping them. You're helping them do something. In the case of washing your hands, what an apt analogy, right? I didn't even think of that one until just now. But when you're washing the other hand, you're giving them something. You're also potentially receiving something. What you're receiving is, if you're the other hand, you too are being washed. The epiphany is, have you ever tried to wash your hand with just one hand? So I was thinking about that. I was like, that'd be really difficult. It'd be hard to get to the back if you were washing one hand. So in essence, as it relates to leadership, focusing on yourself, refusing to serve others as it relates to your hands is virtually impossible. Because washing a single hand, you are neither giving nor receiving. So if we're always open-handed, if we're always open to giving, if we're always open to receiving, well, that relates a whole heck of a lot to adaptability. We're willing to change. We're willing to help. As I said in the beginning, I've never or rarely seen people who are only out for themselves grow. Do they achieve some things? Yeah, probably. I mean, there's some, there's probably some people who've done some good things and didn't maybe have the right intentions or whatever. But the way that I found that's easiest to grow is to help others advance. The one thing I heard this week that sounds, I was in a one-on-one and someone said, it's my goal to basically, to train myself right on out of a job. Well, in essence, that is leadership. I'm taking everything I know, everything that I'm good at, all the processes, all the procedures, everything, and I'm going to teach someone so that they can move, so that they can grow, so that they can take on more. That's not working yourself out of a job. That's working as a great leader. That's empowering people to be at their best. That is the essence of open-handedness. Now, the real cool thing will be as that training occurs, as those people become empowered, that receiving information is going to be the real catalyst. Because what's going to happen as the training occurs is there's going to be feedback from that person's perspective. Well, hey, I know that you trained me to do it this way, but I found this really great way, or this really cool software, or this really neat thing that we could do that will make this a whole lot easier. Now the trick in leadership is to say, well, heck, do it that way. I'm not tied to the way I do it. That's just the way I've always done it. That's awesome. Or what if we mesh the two? What if we kind of did the first part my way, because I think that will streamline things, and then, heck, I'm all for doing the second part your way. The other principle he talks about in this section is called the candle principle. You can't hold the candle for others to light their path without lighting your own. Again, I feel like an analogy that makes a whole lot of sense. If you're going to hold the candle for someone else, if you're going to train someone else to do maybe something that you've done in the past, or give your perspective on it, you too are going to grow. Because if you give yourself to everybody on your team's going to get better, and that's not going to go unnoticed. They're going to give everything they have to serve you as well. Oftentimes we want our teams to serve us, but we never serve them. Hey, go do this. Hey, go hit that number. Go do that. Well, what are we doing to help them get there? And sometimes we think, well, I'm helping them by, I'm here, answering questions. Okay. Great. Guess what? You're not serving them. Serve them. Help them. Where do you need help today? I mean, almost to the point where it should be pretty evident that you want to give them help. Verging on darn near annoying. You should be literally looking to not point out mistakes, but rather, how can I help you avoid that next time? Where can I help you? What do you need from me? I'm here for you. Awesome job. Great work. Let's keep it going. That sounds a whole lot different than, why did you do that again? Or, I told you so. Or, why didn't you listen to me? Because at the end of the day, they're never going to listen to you. They're listening because they have to. Wouldn't it be a whole lot more powerful if they listened because they wanted to? If they listened because they wanted to serve you? They wanted to make you look good? Your ego is far better served when people are trying to serve you than when you're trying to serve yourself. Trust me. So as we wrap up here, we've talked a lot about different things. We've talked a lot about humility, how we can set our ego aside, how we can be receptive to serving others. We've talked about adaptability. How can we be open to change? How can we foster a mentality of change within our team? We talked about open-handedness. Maxwell refers to a poem. I'm not a big poetry reader, but this one struck me. That where Ella Wheeler Wilcox talks in her poem about, are we lifting or are we leaning? There's two kinds of people. There's leaners and there's lifters. And really, when you compare that to open-handedness, are we lifting our people or are we leaning on them for results? Are we leaning on them to do what we say? Lifting sounds a whole lot better. Leaning sounds like, dude, just back off. Come on, stay away from me. And that's what open-handedness are. They're all connected. And ultimately, they're all connected to you. They're all connected to your vision of where you want to be, what you want to do. You know, as the saying goes, no one gets there alone. This place is the greatest representation of that. It takes all of us. That's the thing I absolutely love about this business. If you ask me one thing that I love the fact that it takes in the neighborhood sometimes of 10 to 20 people to complete a job. 10 to 20 people on our team from start to finish it takes on our team to complete a job. Now some of you may just think, well, it's just a service call. I ran it. It's done. Or, hey, I'm the manager. I could do that. But it takes the entire team. I love our turnover processes. I love our ability to streamline a service call to installers to happy customer. Not to mention all of the accounting functions that take place on the back end of that and all of the call center and marketing functions that take place to get that person to the customer's home. It may be more than 20 people. 20 individual people it may take to run one call and do it at the level that we do it. We've been consistently this week going into probably close to 200 homes a day when you combine all of the things that we're doing. That's incredible. That's really fun to get to serve almost 200 people a day, while at the same time serving close to 150 here. That's awesome. But we did it, and we continue to do it, and we will always do it by serving others. Usually at the end of every company meeting, I go, just go out and help somebody. If you do anything today, just go out and help somebody on the team. Because ultimately, while it may be a small gesture, while a phone call to some guy to say, hey man, saw what you did yesterday, awesome job, that is leadership. Serving others is leadership. And when you open your mind to it, when you understand, when you start to see that by repeatedly serving others on a day in, day out basis, what happens is you too will grow, you too will accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish. So I ask you, as you dive in, when you start to craft that vision, when you sit down at a quiet time and just think about, what do I want my life to look like in 3 years, 5 years? I find 3 is a pretty good number. What do I want that to look like? What's it feel like? What do I look like? What is that? Who are the people around me? What is that? When you do that, keep in mind, how do I serve others to get to that place? Because that mindset will get you up there a whole heck of a lot faster. It's not, I'm going to get there by reading 30 books, over the next 3 years. It's going to be awesome. No. It's read 30 books. What are you going to do with that information? How are you going to share it? How are you going to serve others? Because if you read 30 books, that's a great accomplishment. I'm not taking away from it. But at the end of the day, if you read it and don't share it with anybody, it kind of, great, you made it through. It's a great accomplishment to finish one, but it didn't really do much. Probably didn't do what it was intended to do. And also think about, as you craft that, as you work on your time management, where is it that you serve others in that time? How much more powerful of a vision does that become? I'll tell you, it's a heck of a lot easier too. Because going out and helping somebody is kind of one of the easier things you can do. You just have to be willing to do it. And you've also got to believe that it's the right thing to do. But when you can do that, when you can practice humility, when you can practice adaptability, when you can practice open-handedness, the ultimate goal of a leader is to inspire others. And inspiration sounds like a big thing, like, oh my God, we think about Martin Luther King or Mother Teresa, like those were inspiring people. They were, indeed. But when you get down to it, obviously they had a grander stage, and, we may never be on that stage or fighting for a cause that big. But at the end of the day, they inspired people. That's why people followed them. They inspired because they served others, not because they served themselves. And when we inspire, that's leadership.